This episode of Ticket Volume is brought to you by us, Invigate. Get service operations under control in no time. Get 1 free month of our software solution by going to try.invigate.com. Ticket Volume is proud to present an expert in sustainability who got her start working at university before becoming a solutions consultant at Innovyze ESM, now Engage ESM, part of Atos. She served on a special interest group as part of ITSMF, as well as serving BCS before joining Sharewell, now Avanti, where she served in both sales and partner management roles. Then, after adding another family member, she did the same at TaskTop, now PlanView, before going completely independent as a management consultant and founder of Tuuli Bell Ltd. She also serves as a senior ESG advisor to the ESG Institute. Welcome to Ticket Volume, where good service is good business. We share news and information for improving IT experiences. I am your lucky host, Matt Beran, and I get to chat with different nerds and share their insights on service management, technology, business, and this episode is going to be more of that innovative gospel we've come to know and love from this podcast. So I also hope that you'll leave a comment or connect with us or share a podcast with someone. Get involved, get us improving, get collaborating on this ticket with us. We need more agents on this ticket to get Ticket Volume to the next level. Now, let's begin. Welcome to Ticket Volume, Dr. Tuuli Bell.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. We met at SITS last year. I got to sit in on your session, which was fantastic. And I think because I asked the question, you gave me a book too on giving good demos or good pre-sales techniques, which is another part of your history. Kind of an interesting part of your career, and it really helped our team, our pre-sales engineers team. They loved the book. And another thing that I didn't mention is that you're an artist. And I love when artists share what they're doing on LinkedIn. So thank you for putting your art out there.
Well, thank you.
Now let's get into sustainability, because this is what you spoke on at SITS. And this is something that I think is very important for people to start learning about, especially because it feels like we're a bit behind the curve. Maybe we're ahead of the curve. I don't really know. We'll know in hindsight, though.
Yeah, I think we're a bit behind, to be honest.
We are. Okay, good.
Makes the course better, and we'll get there faster together.
Yes, exactly. Let's do it. So what sectors or industries seem to be taking this the most seriously? Who's working on environmentalism or sustainability the most right now?
So a lot of sectors such as construction sector, they are very much leading sustainability in terms of different industries. The other one, which has got a lot of press, is textiles, so clothing, anything that's consumer facing and things and industries where we can relate. I think those are the industries which are leading the industry leading sustainability at the moment. And I think that's very much because of the pressure from consumers. So the traditional industries, for example, finance is a huge one, by the way. One of the biggest impacts that you can have and you can make as an individual is to make sure that your financial investments are invested in good companies and sustainable companies. That's one of the key things you can do. So I did that. I think in the last couple of years, all my pension investments moved over away from oil and gas, for example, into sustainable funds. And there are actually quite a few different funds that you can choose from. So it's no longer you got to go for this one specific fund. So those are some of those sectors. And IT, obviously, we'll talk about sustainable IT a lot today. And that's one of those sectors where we can make a huge impact through what I would call a sustainable transformation, very similar to what we did in digital transformation in the last couple of decades.
Nice. Great answer. You gave people an individual thing that they can do already if they're interested in being sustainable. Change your investment strategies to environmental moral choices, and that's a great way to do that individually. Fantastic. And it totally makes sense. If you built a house 10 years ago, the materials didn't cost as much as they do now, so of course there's pressure on that industry to find cost savings. And I really like how you pointed out consumer pressure. It's something that is going to drive sustainability at the beginning, because organizations, the B2B services, the B2B industries, business to business industries, are they're going to be laggards. They're going to be following up. They're going to be afterthoughts, and that's, I think, unfortunate, because I think there's a lot more to be gained in that space.
Huge amount. I
Yeah.
always, so my customers, I like to describe them as mostly software organizations who want to do good and grow. So they want to mature, they want to do that sustainably, and that's sustainable in terms of financial sustainability and environmental sustainability. And they do go hand in hand.
Okay, so let's get into this, because this is where the rubber hits the road. Really, you mentioned application development. Um, is ESG a part of IT, or is it something that should span horizontally across an organization? Is it its own department?
It's a little bit similar to any of these shared services, such as IT or HR or legal, and sustainability, ESG, so that's environmental, social, and governance, really should sit along all of those different departments. So whether your organization is organized by value streams, for example, by products, services, etc., really ESG should be on top of all of that. What happens in practice, though, in a lot of organizations, unfortunately, will put a very junior person, a sustainability lead or something of the sort. You'll put them into a department of one person, and then they will try and do everything. And obviously, there's no traction in an organization; doesn't really work. So the best work that I've seen in organizations is where individuals who have a lot of interest in sustainability and in making the world a better change, they actually get together in a working group, and then they work with a formal sustainability practice within the organization, and they find all these different use cases in IT departments. They'll find products that either serve your customers more sustainably, or then recreate their practices and processes into becoming more sustainable.
That's such a good hack. I love it. That makes total sense. If you, uh, I don't like that they put junior people on an ESG initiative to just fail. But I love the idea that you could have, on every one of your agile teams, you can have someone who is focused on ESG. It's something that they care about, something they want to include in the outcomes of the project. And then they're meeting with the other people that are also interested in ESG across the company, so that they can align together. It's almost like a second department. Yes,
Yeah.
you work in app dev, or you work in the PMO, but you also are really interested in ESG, and so we're going to put a tiara or a crown on you and say you are the ESG representative on this project. That's a cool hack. I really like that. And in IT, where do you see ESG being the most important? Is it like what phase, what ITIL phase, what ITIL book does it belong in? Where is it part of service design? Is it transition? Is it operations? Is it all of it? Where does it live?
So again, I think it's all of it. So
Yeah.
when we look at the different ITIL practices, I did a talk at Service Space in Vienna, a great conference, by the way, if you're planning next year's conferences. And I talked about how will ITIL practices be different in the future, because we cannot deny climate change. We cannot deny the huge impact loss of biodiversity, for example, has on the future. And if you look at what the future scenarios of governments, what they predict future scenarios look like, they all center around climate change is real. That has had an impact on every single sector. And so we almost have to look at not how does ITIL move into which direction at the moment. We have to look at the endpoint. So where in a future where climate change is real, in a future where there is I wouldn't necessarily say more chaos. I'm very much of a positive thinker. I think it'll be a great future, and we can all make that a great future. But what are some of those aspects and some of those new things in the future that we have to accommodate in our ITIL practices? Say asset management is a great example, or incident management or problem management. How do those transform? What do we need to take? What are those steps we need to take now so that we can be ready for that sustainable future?
Oh, this is so good. I already love this episode so much. Because optimists are few and far between on this topic. And I also am an optimist. I love the idea that we can imagine a beautiful future instead of the post-apocalyptic drivel we've been fed by sci-fi. But don't get me wrong, I love post-apocalyptic sci-fi too. But I love that. You can see how if you give the onus, the responsibility of an ESG goal to an incident manager, and then you help them see that future, that optimistic future, you can see how our dead set focus on incident management being reduced downtime is going to be a bit more fuzzy, right? We're not going to spend as much money, or maybe not money necessarily, but we're not going to spend as much environmentally to resolve that incident necessarily, right? We'll have that threshold. So instead of shipping a laptop overnight across the world to fix an incident, you are instead maybe doing some pre-planning. You're making sure employees have a second laptop in their location that was shipped at a slow on a ship instead of an airplane, or some other more sustainable way to get them technology when an incident occurs. Is my thinking tracking, Dr. Tuuli Bell? Keep me honest here.
So one of the predictions I make about incident management, for example, is slower IT. And I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but it's very much aligned with what you're saying. Not necessarily everything has to have that dopamine kind of addictive, that layer of, oh, I want this now. I have to get this right now. It's about understanding the priorities, understanding the social, the environmental, and then the governance module around it. And what I mean by slower IT, for example, is rather than trying to get through a huge amount of incidents really quickly, we really concentrate on that one human who comes to us. We spend time with them. We really try and understand what's happening in their minds. And I loved I think it was last episode where you talked about really honoring that employee or that person who comes to your service desk. They have an issue. We don't necessarily ask them to straight away to switch it off and on again. We're a bit more human about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, meet them on their level. Do you need a laptop overnighted? You might not need a laptop overnight. You might have a personal computer that you can log into Chrome securely, use your enterprise applications securely. And this is why, like, when I start thinking about this stuff, I constantly think about it in service design, about how we, greenfield, like this is always the problem with service design, is that people always think about it greenfield, like, oh, this is a service we've never designed before, we've never delivered it before, it's all fresh from scratch. That never exists. It's usually you're starting with something that was already provided manually or via paper or some other technology that's archaic, and then you're upgrading it, you're changing it to a new way, you're optimizing it, you're improving it. And I think for me, that's why I think ESG lives or should be in the mindsets of service designers, people who are responsible for building these systems, and they're making the big decisions: what vendors to choose, what technologies to use, should it be available 24/7. It's all these really big choices that they're making. Is that something that you see in IT? Like, are there IT shops that are thinking this way and saying, oh, we need to modify our service designs so that we can do that? Or is it something else?
It's the vendor management. It's a huge part. So if you think
Mm.
about the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, without going really deep into it, scope 3 emissions really come from both your customers, so where does your stuff end up in, and then also your suppliers. So then it puts a big focus on your suppliers. Now, obviously, that will have a quite a large pressure on SMEs and small companies. So are they going to get certified, which is a very long, or can be a very long process, and put undue pressure on certain SMEs and small businesses. But on the other hand, it's about understanding your vendor landscape. So that's a huge part of it.
Mhm.
In terms of service design, I think the big shift will be away from linear thinking. And this is a, a, a way of thinking that I borrow from circular economy. And circular economy is all about reusing. So basically, we want to keep the stuff that we have. We want to use it for as long as we can. We then fix it for as long as we can. An example of this is a textile industry. Yesterday, I met my customer, and everyone said, "Oh, I love your shirt." And I said, "It's actually my mum's from 1970s. It's been amended quite a few times, and very recently was the last one." And again, it's a bit of an extreme example. We don't need to all wear a shirt for 50 odd years, but again, that's possible. And the same way, we have to start thinking about processes, both services and processes such as asset management is no longer a linear process where we go and buy something new, we then use it, and then we maybe try and fix it. There's a couple of incidents and we're like, oh, we don't like this laptop anymore. Let me go and get another one. And you kind of
Mhm.
forget what happens to that laptop. We really need to start thinking in a much more linear, in a circular fashion.
Mhm.
So first of all, do we need that laptop? That's the first thing. As you said, can we wait? Can we maybe just wait a couple of days, and maybe something will happen? Can we, if you can't wait, is there something around us we can use? Is there has a team member left recently, or are they going to leave very soon? Can we borrow their laptop, for example? Can we reuse that laptop? And I think the way a lot of service management platforms have been designed, they're very much focused on that linear ITIL focused
Mhm.
working, because we still use ITIL. And this is one of the challenges that we have to challenge ourselves. How far do we take the ITIL practices? How far can we adopt them and adapt them? The other one is the pure service design, is again, when we launch a new service, we launch a new product, do we reuse the business processes that we've used elsewhere? And this is something that I think a lot of organizations forget. And those clients that I work with who are in the software industry, a lot of startups, I use a lot of service management capabilities and ideas in business design, because in the same way we manage services, we actually have to start thinking about, can we reuse some of that knowledge that we have across the entire organization? We don't have to reinvent everything. And that's part of the intangible assets that we have in a business that we could reuse as well.
Awesome. That's such a good one. We think about assets and, we always get drawn into the laptop. We always end up talking about endpoints on this podcast because laptops it's a huge part of end user computing. Um, but I love that we're getting into the details because that's what I think people need to hear. Where can I go? What can I do? We need these ideas. We need them out in the open so that people can continue to think about it and apply it. And I think that's really what my next question is. What what are the big steps we can take? Are there obvious, I hate the phrase, but I'm going to say it, low-hanging fruit? Is there stuff that we should just pick off the tree because it's just sitting there? What are the obvious ESG improvements we can make today without convincing executives and the board to change how we're operating as a company?
There's huge amounts that we can do personally, and I think understanding that, yes, we can translate the passion that we have for sustainability, we can translate that into a business context. I think a lot of us in the IT industry, I think we are taking some of those steps already because of COVID, because we are working from home. We don't necessarily make that travel in the car to our workplace, and that's one of those things. If you look at greenhouse gases, that's had a huge impact. There's anything you can basically anything almost that you can do individually, you can do in your business environment. So it's all about thinking about the different resources. If you go very technical and think about the greenhouse gases and the carbon released carbon, is okay. Where do we release that carbon? So our scope one is pretty much what is the oil and fuel that we burn at home, basically. So that's where it starts. Scope two is about pretty much about your electricity. Can we change our electricity provider to a greener electricity provider? And then scope three is about where what happens around us. So where do we source all our stuff from? Where does our stuff end up in? So really think about, first of all, do I need to buy this new thing? Really necessary? Now, it's a really tricky one because I use a lot of art, for example, as part, even at Service-Based Vienna. I got everyone a piece of paper and we drew ourselves in the future, in a happy future, and then wrote on the other side the actions we can take today. Now, it's a fine line of, okay, I am taking that bit of paper into Vienna, I'm flying there for a start. And then, yes, they'll be recyclable, but still things that we will throw in the bin or in the recycling bin. But then on the other hand, if the impact from that talk is that we are all taking huge amounts of action, then again, what is the right thing? I really liked, I can't remember who it was on LinkedIn, said, everyone's a little bit of a hypocrite in sustainability because we cannot live entirely sustainably, as in it's so difficult. And if you did everything that you should be doing, you wouldn't leave your home, you wouldn't see anyone. And that's why I think it's so important to remember the social aspect of ESG. It's really all about making everyone happy, everyone being able to live longer, happier, healthier, and so forth. That's what it's all about. And it's about living in harmony with nature. And how can we help nature? How can nature help us as well get there? And if you kind of go back to your roots and think about what can I do, it's a different thing for different people. Can I watch TV a little bit less every night, for example? We're saving electricity, but actually we're getting less, and I wouldn't necessarily say bad stuff into your head, but things that kind of mindless things into your head. So becoming a little bit more peaceful, for example, spending a bit more time with your friends and family. So there's a huge amount of things you can do. If you want to get political, because that is a big part of it, so you can get in touch with your MPs. We've all got new MPs in the UK. You can help with the activism side of it as well. So there's a huge amount of things that you can do. And remember that in your IT department and in your organization, there are steps. So when I work with my clients, I look at, okay, where are you on that maturity scale from 0 to 6? First of all, how are we doing with compliance? Then what are those things that our customers are expecting you to do? And all of those steps are actually helping your organizational goals in terms of monetary goals. So I always think it's about growing the business and it's about making the world a better place at the same time.
Good stuff. Yes. And I encourage people to do this, try to see where you're being sustainable. Try to add sustainability to your life. It is mind-blowing. It is eye-opening how difficult it can be. And you're right. You can never be perfect. At a certain point, you have to consume something. And I really loved your example of going to service space because, as someone who flies around speaking at events, that's large part of my carbon footprint is the fact that I'm flying around. And that's a challenge. I love that you bring it to personal things that you can do, and then you start thinking about what the organization can do as well. There's so many places we can go on this topic. It's almost paralyzing. What countries or governing bodies are making the most headway in this area? I know with NIS2 coming out that supply chains for some of the really big industries are going to be more. They're going to be inspected more. They're going to know a lot more about their supply chain than ever before. And I feel like that's a good step in the right direction as far as what the EU has been doing. But are there individual things that countries or organizations are doing that we should be looking at as far as compliance?
So EU is a great starting point, and remember, the EU laws will apply to your business if you work in the EU. So you might be based in the US, in the UK, but if you're working in the EU, that will apply to you as well. There's a lot more focus, I think, on certifications in Europe as well. So someone I spoke in Vienna, and so for example, my own business isn't certified, at least not yet. I will change that at some point. But again, that's one of those areas where a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, where you have been focusing on sustainability, you've almost been kind of exempt from that because you're working on the subject, then taking away all that time on kind of tick box exercises of, okay, we want to get B Corp or something else. And it's a really difficult one. Yes, I will, for example, I will get my business there at some point. But again, at the moment, I'm very much focused on my SDG goals, for example. So I've chosen that route. So EU is a great place to look at. The UK as well. A lot of the laws are similar, or kind of following each other. Now, again, on LinkedIn, and I've been to talks by legal organizations who focus on sustainability, and even they can't keep up with all the laws and regulations. There's just so much, which is a great thing, I think, on one hand. On the other hand, as you said, it can be quite paralyzing because there's just so much. And I think there is definitely space for legislation, but then there should be something where each organization should really look at, okay, what is our almost unique identifier of how can we change the world for a better place? And that's something that I'm trying to help customers find. So how do we change? What is the impact that we can do? What are the steps that we can mature? And I think IT is a great place to start, and service management, because we already have those practices in place. I think service management is so used to improving itself. We all talk about CSI, continuous service improvement. We always want to get better and better and better, to a point where we're spending so much time in getting better. It might be counterintuitive. However, we are very open as an industry in service management to improvements, and that's why service management is a great place to start with your sustainability initiatives. And again, IT is something that you will always need. Digital, you'll need those capabilities with that sustainable transformation. And IT and business, they're already very joined up, but they will be even more joined up in the future. You can see the number of AI companies, or number of various different software companies, which are popping up everywhere, and those are very much the IT is the business, which is really exciting. And with software, you can scale so much. So whatever you have on one customer, you can then duplicate. You can scale across your entire customer base.
Yeah, that's such a good example of how you can gradually add this stuff. Apply it to a small part of your processes, a small part of your subjects, your stakeholders, whatever, and then see how it works. Is that working? And then apply it across. It's it's such a good way to prototype your ESG initiatives. That is a great, I love that advice. That might be the advice of the episode, actually, is to just put it into some of your projects. Do a subset of your project differently than the rest of it and see how it works. See how your customers react to environmental sustainability, and you might be surprised. Dr. Tuuli Bell, I want to thank you so much for being on Ticket Volume today. How can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I do have quite a unique name, so you'll be able to find me that way. And also my business is my own name, so tuulibell.com. You can sign up to a newsletter, and I will post my latest ITIL practice guidance on sustainability there as well, so you'll be able to download it.
Nice. If you're an ITIL head or an IT geek, you should sign up for that newsletter if you're interested in sustainability. Dr. Tuuli Bell, thank you so much for taking the time today. Thank you for being on Ticket Volume.
Thank you very much, Matt. My pleasure.
And for our audience, thanks for turning up the ticket volume. We've got some great episodes coming up, so please register to get alerts on new episodes at invigate.com/ticket-volume or ticketvolume.com. It will forward you to the correct address. And we'll also send you a free map of IT tools if you go and register for our podcast and to get those alerts. And the link should be in the description. Thanks for listening to Ticket Volume. You can change or improve this podcast by DMing me or leaving a comment or just putting it on the internet, and hopefully I'll find it. And speaking of Ticket Volume, did you know that this podcast is brought to you by Invigate? It's a fit-for-purpose service desk solution with integrated asset management designed to let you focus on supporting your organization without arduous implementations and 20-man ITSM management teams. In fact, IT teams from Toyota, NASA, and McDonald's use Invigate to manage requests, automate workflows, and centralize inventory data so that they can focus on delivering better service, because good service is good business.